Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernst Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Breaking news has just occurred in the college basketball world and the NBA world because Dan Hurley, we now know where he is going to be coaching basketball in the 2024-2025 season, and it's not going to be in the NBA. That's right. Dan Hurley turned down the massive offer that the Los Angeles Lakers gave to him, and he is staying with the UConn Huskies in the pursuit of possibly being able to win a third straight national title in college basketball. I'm going to go over Dan Hurley's decision to stay at UConn and whether I believe that he made the right decision to stay with the Huskies or if he should have gone off to the NBA to coach the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Dan Hurley, we know he is probably the hottest name in all of basketball right now when it comes to coaching because he has won back-to-back national titles in college basketball to become the first head coach to do it since Billy Donovan when he was at the Florida Gators back in the 2000s and early 2010s, winning those two titles in 2006 and 2007. But Billy Donovan, even though he did eventually go off to the NBA after coaching the Florida Gators for many seasons, he didn't go off to the NBA after those two back-to-back national titles. He stayed with the Gators for a few more years. But a lot of people thought that Dan Hurley, since the Lakers job became open, that there was a chance he would take the Lakers job and make a different decision than Billy Donovan did when he was offered a head coaching job in the NBA right after those back-to-back national titles at Florida. And it was a lucrative offer. The Los Angeles Lakers were throwing out the bag to Dan Hurley, offering him a 6-year, like $70 million contract. It was an unbelievable amount of money. And Dan Hurley, he's already making an incredible amount of money at the UConn Huskies. He's gotten a massive contract extension, which is well-deserved after what he has done with UConn the past few years, especially these last two seasons, winning back-to-back titles. But Dan Hurley, he turned down the Kentucky head basketball coaching job when it became available after John Calipari decided that he was going to the Arkansas Razorbacks. So if Dan Hurley could turn down the Kentucky job in college basketball, which you could argue is the best job in all of the sport, even though UConn's getting much better with the amount of success that they're having recently, Kentucky's still Kentucky. But Dan Hurley turned it down, and now he just turned down the Los Angeles Lakers, which you could argue is the top head basketball coaching job in all of basketball in America. Maybe you could say the Boston Celtics as well, but the Lakers, they are a huge brand. They have a massive fan base, and it's in LA. But my thing is why I was a massive proponent of Dan Hurley not going off to the Los Angeles Lakers and that he should stay at UConn is because LeBron James is still in LA. And I know a lot of people are probably going to cringe at me bringing that up and say that LeBron James should not be a reason of why you shouldn't become a head coach of that team or not. But really, if you think about it, LeBron James has gotten more head coaches fired than any other player in sports history. And also, when you talk about the whole Bronny situation, it's going to be an absolute mess with Los Angeles. If they decide to draft Bronny James, which I've been completely against, they need to take Bronny James as an undrafted free agent. I don't think any other team should draft Bronny either to get LeBron James, especially when LeBron James barely has any more years left in his career. I think that would be an absolute dumb move. But Dan Hurley, he is a fantastic head coach, that we know. But if he became the Los Angeles Lakers head coach and then the Lakers told him that they needed to draft Bronny to keep LeBron James and then things don't work out and then LeBron James decides to retire or move on to another team, who are they going to blame that on? The top people in the organization aren't going to be blamed. They're going to end up blaming Dan Hurley, even though Dan Hurley wouldn't have been the person to blame. Plus, Dan Hurley has some of the most charisma I've ever seen for a coach in basketball history. All you have to do is look at the picture on the screen right now of him losing his mind, screaming at his player. He is an energetic guy. He gets after his players. He cares about his players because he wants them to do good and he wants the team to have a lot of success, but he knows how to draw up plays. He's very smart when it comes to being a head basketball coach in college, but that's not going to work in the pros. You can't be that same type of guy in the NBA. Dan Hurley would have to change everything about himself to be the Lakers head coach because you can't do that to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You can't scream at him. You can't basically hardly tell him what to do. You have to actually let the players do what they want and sometimes offer advice, but LeBron James isn't going to listen to Dan Hurley. Anthony Davis is not going to listen to Dan Hurley. So if he's pulling his antics that he normally pulls in college basketball, it just wouldn't work with the Lakers. And there's a really good chance Dan Hurley would have been fired after a couple seasons at the Lakers because most of the recent head basketball coaches for the Lakers all have been fired, and all of the coaches that LeBron James has had, except for Eric Spoelstra, have basically been fired as well. Dan Hurley made the right decision to stay at UConn. He dodged a massive bullet. It was a lucrative offer, but sometimes you can't take the low-hanging fruit. You got to just sit back, be content with what you have. Dan Hurley has a dynasty brewing in the making at UConn. He could end up being the next John Wooden, winning multiple national titles beyond what he has already done. We'll have to see. Maybe he never wins another one. And maybe Dan Hurley decides, like Billy Donovan, to go off to the NBA eventually. But the time is not now. I think Dan Hurley made the right decision to stay at UConn. This is great for college basketball, and it's fantastic for UConn Husky fans because they definitely were worried. As you could see this meme on Twitter where people were showing this is what the Lakers and UConn fans were looking like waiting for Dan Hurley's announcement. But I've been saying all week on Twitter, don't take the Lakers job, Dan Hurley. I've been a massive proponent of Dan Hurley staying at UConn. If you follow me on Twitter, you would have seen all the posts that I've made on it. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't, by the way, would really appreciate it. But still, I think that this decision by Dan Hurley to stay at UConn shows that he knows what he's doing. He's not a guy that's just going to take a job because of money, and I think that's very smart and that's very calculative. Even though Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that 6-year, $70 million offer that the Lakers offered to Dan Hurley, he has turned down the offer to chase that third straight national title. The Lakers would have made Hurley one of the NBA's 6 highest paid coaches, but all of that money did not matter. So we'll have to see what ends up happening for the Los Angeles Lakers. It does seem like, to me, JJ Redick would still be the favorite to get the head coaching job, even though there's been rumors that Anthony Davis doesn't really want JJ Redick to get the job, even though would that actually be LeBron? And they're just saying Anthony Davis to cover up the fact that LeBron doesn't want JJ Redick. I'm not one to speculate, but who knows? There's been other names thrown around as well. Jay Wright was even thrown around on Twitter the other day. Jay Wright's not taking the job. If Jay Wright didn't take the Kentucky job or the North Carolina job back a few years ago when it was open, he's not going to take the Lakers job. I think he is absolutely content to continue being a college basketball commentator. He does not like the changing times when it comes to the coaching realm in college basketball or the NBA. Things are much more difficult for coaches these days, especially to keep your job, even though they're getting paid a lot of money. And if you get fired, it's no big deal because you're going to be getting that money. And it looks bad on your resume to get fired, but you're still going to be making out like a bandit, kind of like Jimbo Fisher did at Texas A&M, getting that $75 million buyout from the Aggies just to leave. So it's not working out all too bad for coaches that do get fired, but it is a bad look for your image. And I think Dan Hurley wants to continue to have a great image. He wants to continue to have a lot of success in college basketball, and it will remain to be seen how much longer he does stay in Stores. I think he might stay there for a few more years, try to win a couple more titles if possible, and then maybe he will go off to the NBA. But you never know. Maybe he will be content to stay at UConn forever. History does indicate that won't be the case, but only time will tell in that regard. But I do think Dan Hurley made the smart decision to avoid the Lakers job at all costs. And I think if you're JJ Redick and some of these other candidates for the job, I would be very weary of taking the job as well. I see why JJ Redick would take it because he's never coached before. He's been a commentator for the past few years. He's young, so even if he got fired at the Lakers, he possibly would get another opportunity in the future. But still, I would avoid it if I'm JJ Redick. But we'll see what the Lakers do. But the UConn Huskies got great news with the announcement that Dan Hurley's staying. If he left, that would have really thrown a wrinkle into the UConn Huskies' plans for next season. They would have had to have gotten a new head coach at this stage in the game, which would have been very tough. Probably lost half of the players on the team. That would have been a disaster. But I think it's a win-win situation for the UConn Huskies, Dan Hurley, and even the Lakers to an extent as well, because I don't think Dan Hurley would have fit with what the NBA coaches have to do. It just wouldn't have fit for Dan Hurley, especially in LA. So sometimes everything works out, and we'll have to see what happens with the Lakers head coaching search. But the UConn Huskies, they got their guy for next season, and that is definitely a great thing for UConn and college basketball. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Whether you agree with me with Dan Hurley's decision to stay at UConn, or if you think he should have taken the Los Angeles Lakers head coaching job, and who you think potentially the Lakers will end up hiring to be their next head coach. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.